Hey everyone! I was just double checking then that you could definitely still hear me because last time I forgot to turn my microphone on, which was really good fun. Hi, welcome to another episode of Watercolour Club. Today, this is a little bit different than it has been the last two times. I'm trying something a bit new. I have been doing lots of tutorials where you can paint along with me. But today I'm going to do a painting that I've been meaning to get started on for quite a while, and I thought I would let you join me and I'll kind of talk you through a bit about what I'm doing, but I'm not really expecting you guys to follow along and do the same as me. So what you might like to do if you've got a watercolour set and you want to paint along is find something that you'd like to paint and just paint, and it would be like we're in the same room doing a bit of art together but working on our own projects. So that's the kind of the plan. There's also the chat up in the corner, so I've called this paint and chat because if you send me a little message into that little chat window, I can see what you're saying and I can reply to it and we can have a little bit of a conversation. So the plan is that we're going to feel a little bit less lonely by the end of this session. And hopefully I'll have made a bit of a start on my painting as well. So it says that I've got 9 people watching at the moment, which is brilliant. I didn't promote this very much because I wasn't sure quite how it was going to go, and I only decided I was going to do it earlier this week. So that's why there's not so many people watching. But obviously you can come back and watch this again at another point, and if you're watching in the future, hello from the past. So I'm going to show you what I'm working on today by pushing my magic button, which I've lost. There it is. Okay. Again, I struggled to get the camera facing straight on, so hopefully that's okay. You should be able to see what I'm doing without me getting in the way. I also feel like it's not quite focused on the right area, but there we go. So I'm going to be doing a painting of St Andrew's Church in Plymouth. So I've got it up here, but here's another version of it. I don't like the focus. It's not. There we go. Right. So I was asked to do this. So this is actually a commission, which I was really pleased with. So the people who run the shop here at St Andrews, they wanted a picture of this sculpture here, which is a sculpture of St Andrews, and they weren't sure whether to have a photograph or have a painting done. So I showed them kind of what I do in my paintings, and they decided they'd like to commission me to do a painting for them. So I've taken this picture specifically because they wanted the church in the background, but then this the gateway with St Andrew here and his net. So it's quite a complicated angle because there's quite a lot of layers. So I've been building up to this for quite a while, doing like lots of little sketches and things. So it might not go to plan first time, but we'll see. Generally, the way that my churches end up. So I've got an example out to show you in case you were interested. This is Bath Abbey, which I had the pleasure of going and ringing their bells fairly recently, before all this lockdown. It was raining that day, so I took this picture of Bath Abbey, and it was reflected in the paving stones below. So I did this quite loose painting of Bath Abbey, which I really enjoyed it. Not sure I like how it turned out, but I don't know. It's a bit different to what I usually do. The other one I have to hand it's in a frame, so I don't know if it'll. It's that one there, and that's Walkhampton Church in Dartmoor. Again, it was a really rainy day. This was in January, but I think sometimes rainy photos make better watercolours. Annoyingly though, this was a nice bright sunny day, so I've got a nice blue sky to try and recreate today. So I've got no messages in the chat, so just in case anyone's not sure how to access that chat, I think you need to log in. I think that's the the way you access it, and it's to the right of the video. And if you're watching on a mobile or anything, I think you need to be using the YouTube app. So you can send me a message in there and I can see it and reply. Otherwise, just keep watching, I guess. So I hope everybody is doing all right. It's been a little bit up and down, hasn't it? And I've been finding some days are a lot better than other days. Today's a good day. Oh, tipping my paintbrushes everywhere just as I said that. Okay, so today I am using my Daniel Smith watercolour paints, and I am using my Da Vinci paintbrushes. Which camera? That one. So that these are amazing. If you want to invest in some really nice paintbrushes, I got this for Christmas. It comes in an incredible little box, so keeps them nice and safe. Also with a little bar of soap, which is good fun. When you have to clean your paintbrushes, you've got special soap for it. It's pretty cool. But I'm going to start off with my nice big brush. It's called a mop brush because it looks like a mop. Hi Matthew, and hi Helen. She's saying the chat works, which is excellent news. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm really nervous because normally I've got like this real step-by-step plan, and now I'm just like, right, do a painting and do it live on YouTube. Okay. And hi Kate. Just about to get started, going to paint some pictures for Max, my brother, on birthday on Monday. Great, cool, that's really good, Kate. Watercolour paintings make very good presents, I think. Okay, I'm procrastinating by wetting my brush over and over again. So I'm going to put some water up on the area which is my sky. I am going to pretend that there are more clouds in this sky because I think it will just make it look a bit more interesting than just a flat blue. So I'll make the sky quite wet to begin with and then let the paint move around. That should look quite nice. Kate's really enjoying the live streams. That's really good. I think I've seen you on every one so far, which is really nice. So if anyone's thinking about painting along and wants to take some little tips from what I am doing, by wetting the sky like this before I've put any paint on, it just helps the paint to move around, and it means you don't get any hard edges. And as we know, there's no hard edges in the sky, so just softens it off a little bit. Every time I concentrate, I just stop talking. It's really funny. Okay. So I'm just kind of dabbing the paint on wherever I feel like it should go. I can sort it out later if it doesn't look quite right. But I find that a lot easier to do than a flat sky as well. And I think it looks nice. It's also important if you've got stuff in your foreground, like they've got the church and the sculpture, and it kind of interrupts the sky, but there's little gaps, and sometimes I forget to do a bit, so I quite often leave like a little gap down there or something, miss a bit out. That's very annoying because I then have to mix the exact same colour again. Okay. There's quite a lot going on in this picture as well, so I'm not going to put crazy dramatic clouds in because it could just end up looking a little bit too busy. I'm very fond of this church. I'm very lucky to know it quite well because I am one of the bell ringers and I spend a lot of time in that tower usually. Obviously not at the moment, but we've got 10 bells at St Andrews, and fairly recently a video went viral which was a recording of the bells, because we've got a clock attached to a carillon which chimes the bells automatically, and we've set that going because we can't be ringing. And every morning at 9 o'clock it rings out the tune of Abide With Me, and it's really quite haunting actually. I haven't seen it in person, I've only seen it in the video, but it sounds really amazing, and it's nice to hear our bells being rung. Kind of giving people a little bit of hope at the moment, which is nice. So I'm quite pleased that I got asked to do this painting because it does mean a lot to me. And the idea with this, I believe, is that it's going to be turned into postcards and prints that you can buy in the shop, which is quite nice. So there's a building here which is the treasury in, or part, what is it, like a cocktail bar really. It's not really the focus of the painting, but it is there. So what I'm going to do is sort of make a shadow where it is, just so it sort of sits right behind the church. It doesn't look like it's part of the church. See what that does. Dark enough. Paint me like one of your French girls. I would, but I'm not very good at people. Remember life drawing classes at when I was at university, and they never went well for me. I always got really embarrassed about how badly I'd drawn the model. I think that will work. So you're going to see all of the times that I get completely impatient and forget to wait for it to dry. Either that or just feel like I'm immune and that my paint's not going to run. All the little mistakes that in my tutorials I tell you guys not to do. And then here I am making them all. So I'm going to change to a slightly smaller brush for just a bit more control. I'm going to do this roof, which is blue. It's like a dark, well, the shadow of it is blue and then it goes into like a brown at the bottom. So I'll do the shadow first. I totally model for you. I'll take no offence. Thank you very much. It's a very kind offer. This is another one from the Da Vinci set of brushes, and I really love it because it's got a really fine tip, and yeah, it's quite fat in the middle, so if I want a fat line I can just push a little bit harder. It's very nice. Before these brushes I just used quite cheap ones, so I really noticed the difference when I upgraded. Same with these paints actually. I used fairly cheap ones before. And then when you get these with a really, really nice pigment and you can blend these colours out really nicely. And you just think, oh, why did I wait so long? But if it dries too quickly, do you have to re-wet the paper? I had my first go at watercolour yesterday in the sunshine. The paper dried very quickly, says Helen. Yeah, that happens to me as well. Sometimes it's really hot in my studio and the paper dries a lot quicker than you want it to. You can just re-wet the paper. If you're going over a bit that you've already painted and you want to keep that the same, just make sure when you're brushing the water on, it's very light, a very light touch, and not too much water as well, because otherwise it can pick up the paint that you've already put down. But then if you go back over the top, it should be fine. The only limitation is, so you've got to make sure you are definitely using watercolour paper, because normal paper won't really withstand you wetting it multiple times. I would just keep your paper wet when you're doing like the flowy stuff and try and get that bit done quite quickly, but you don't need to keep your paper wet all the time as well. That's good to know. So when you want to be a bit more controlled, so this bit here, my paper was actually dry and it just stops it from blurring back up into the sky, which is annoying. I'm doing the same with this line at the top, just sharpening it up. And Elena's here with her sunglasses on, which is brilliant. This bit here is going to disappear behind the tree, so I'm not that worried about it. I just want, when I've put the tree in, I want it to look like it's there is something there. So. Dropped water on my picture, which is annoying because it's made the colours bleed. But it's okay. That's okay, Helen. Okay. So I'm going to just do that lighter bit at the bottom of the roof. Not sure if I've got the right colour. Oh no, that does seem to work. These paintings usually take me quite a long time, so I highly doubt I'll actually finish this today. Oops. Well done, Elena, that was very good. There's another tip for you. Don't put your hand on your wet painting. That doesn't work. Okay, I think I'll get some of the shadow and shading onto the tower. And I'm going to move on to an even smaller brush for this, because that's some quite small sections in there that I need to get quite precise. I'm not sure how easy it is for you to see what I'm doing. I might zoom in a little. So my first step when I put shadows onto buildings like this is to basically draw onto the outlines that I've marked in pencil. And I do that over a dry piece of paper so that the lines are very sharp. And then when I go back over with like a wash of another colour, those hard lines that I've made will stay. You'll be able to see them through the paint that goes over the top. So I usually start with quite a light colour, and this is the lightest side of the tower here, so I've gone for like a nice bright brown. Looks like the sun's hit it, and the other side will be a little bit more blue. So add a bit more. I've mixed up a very, very slightly darker brown just to put on this side, following the same thing where I just outline the bits that are most visible. There's a trick I was taught as well when you're looking at an object and trying to work out light and shadow, which can be quite hard. If you squint at it, then you see like almost a higher contrast version of what you're looking at, and you can pick out the darker parts on it. It does get easier with practice just to see where those darker parts need to go. But if you're painting from life, where the sun changes all the time, or the light changes, or a cloud might go past, you have to be quite quick at being able to see where the shadows are. So that is quite a good little trick to pick it up very quickly and then mark it down on your painting, and then you can move on to putting the details in. Going around the clock now. This is also a chance to get a little bit of the brickwork in as well. I feel as though the focus isn't quite right here. I'm going to try and change it. Did that do anything? I think I must have changed the setting on my camera, because when I first did this it was focusing perfectly on what I wanted it to do, but now I have to keep telling it off. Okay, so again, this part of the tower is going to be blocked by the trees in the image. The trees will has grown just over there. So while it's here, it is behind that tree, but it's not very visible. So I'm just going to mark where it is, but I'm not going to work too hard on getting that perfect, just so you'll be able to see it through the tree. Something like that. That should be all right. Okay, I'm going to go in with a darker brown now. That's better. Okay. There's a little window here. That's the window to the bell ringing chamber. So if anybody is joining me for the first time, I have been doing this since the beginning of the lockdown situation on YouTube. Before that, I was running a watercolour club in Ocean Studios in Plymouth, which was really, really good. And I met loads of people there who, some of them had never painted before or hadn't painted since school, but were doing really, really well. So I've been trying to keep in touch with everybody by doing these videos. You can go back and see the tutorials that I've done in the past, and I also have another one coming up fairly soon, which will be on, I believe, the 17th of May. I think that's right, but it's a Sunday at 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock. And those tutorials are more like step by step, and we come out at the end with some paintings. So if you want to go back and look at the tutorials that I've done, the first one I did was like these forests, sort of misty forests coming forward, and the second one was this sunset lake. So you can actually go onto my YouTube channel, and I've edited it so you don't have to wait for like 30 minutes before it starts, and you can access those tutorials. But if you want to tune in for the next one while it's happening, you can also take part in the chat as well, and then that means that if you get any questions while you're trying to follow my instructions, then you can pop them in the chat, and then I can answer questions as we go. But it's had some really great feedback. There's been loads of people joining in, which is really good, and really, like, I felt really happy about that. So thank you very much if that's you. But I've just been trying to, I guess, find ways of getting around the limitations that we've got in place at the moment. Try and keep things as normal and routine as possible. And Watercolour Club was happening once a month. So those tutorials are scheduled once a month. And this is like a little bonus thing. One of my long-term goals for when doing paintings of churches like this with a clock is to be able to paint the clock well enough that you can see the time. And so far I don't know whether I've quite achieved that yet. It's quite tricky with watercolour, but I've left it blank for now because I want to use a tiny brush and try and get that to work. But if it doesn't, it's fine. Okay, so I think that's the first layer for the tower done. What I tend to do is work in lots of very fine layers, and it just makes the brickwork seem a little bit more real. It's got more texture to it. So I find that building up in very small layers is better than trying to get the colour right perfectly straight away. So Helen says, I only have watercolour pencils at the moment. Are you supposed to soak or dip them in water? Anyone know how to sharpen triangular shaped pencils? Oh wow, triangular shaped pencils. That's new to me. I don't know. I've not come across triangular shaped ones, but I'm wondering. I'm trying to picture it. I'm wondering whether you need to go at it with a sharp knife. In terms of wetting the watercolour pencils, that is one way of using them. I'm not very good at using watercolour pencils. I find them a little bit tricky compared to paint like this. But I have seen people wet a brush and then paint use the water on the brush to get the paint off of the pencil. And then you end up with pretty much the same thing. And so that's how I've always used it if I've only got watercolour pencils. The only other time that I use them is for putting detail over the top of paintings. So that's two ways to use them. But I think if you're I think the technique, and this is not 100%, so don't quote me on this, but I think you have to put quite a thin layer of pencil down on the paper first and then wet over the top. So it's a slightly different technique, like almost backwards to watercolour painting, where you put the water down first. But yes, I think have a little look at some YouTube tutorials and see if there's any that are specifically on watercolour pencils. But I think you should be able to get similar techniques. I think it's just slightly different. Yeah, it's a slightly different order of doing things or something like that. But every medium like that has got its pros and cons. So maybe look into what you could achieve with watercolour pencils that you might not be able to do with paints like this as well. And Helen says, look forward to buying the cards when we can. Thank you very much. I hope that they like it as well in the shop. I'll need to send him an email and tell him that he can watch the painting being made. Okay, what's the logical next step? Ask Santa for some Da Vinci paints. Yeah. Or Winsor and Newton paints are really good to start with, because they come in sets with two of each primary colour, two versions of each primary colour, which is how you could mix any other colour on the colour wheel. So Winsor and Newton paints come in either tubes or in pallets like pans like that. So whichever you feel like you'd prefer to work with. So have a little look for them, and they're also not too bad price-wise either. So they're kind of what I recommend to people that are thinking of getting their first set. You can also get them in most art shops as well. They're quite a common one. So if you want to build up your palette and add more colours in, you can stick with the same brand. sometimes when I'm drawing churches as well, the other thing that you find is there's quite often drain pipes. It has to be drain pipes, otherwise there'd be problems. But I'm always torn as to whether to paint them in or not. Because there's this one here, and I feel like if I left it out it would look quite weird. But at the same time, it's not, I don't know, it's not like part of the architecture or anything like that. So, I don't know. So I always get really, I sometimes include them, sometimes I don't. I think I will include that one because it's quite obvious looking at it that it's definitely there, and it might look a bit funny to anyone who knows this church very well if suddenly the drain pipe disappeared. So as I get towards the bottom of this picture, oops, the building becomes more and more in shadow. So I use, it's almost an indigo colour for shadow. And so the more indigo that you add into the brown, the darker and in shade it looks. And it's a really gorgeous colour, even on its own, and it's really nice for stormy clouds just on its own. Just wet the paper and just use indigo and it just makes the most beautiful clouds. Okay. Okay. Not entirely sure I did that window quite right, but because that's the first layer, I should be able to tidy that up when I go back over it. So I'm not too worried. There's some bricks above here as well that are that fan out a little, so I might just blur that bit. Okay. Pop some shadow on here. And then I've decided now I am definitely going to do that drain pipe as much as I am debating it. I just won't make it the main feature. It's there, but it's got like a light on top, I think. There we go. Okay. So the next layer to get on is this bit here. And I think I'll just start by doing some brickwork. And then go back over with the right details. And more indigo at the bottom than at the top. There's the porch is here, so I'm just going to outline it, but I'm not going to do the bricks on it yet because I think they'll be slightly, they're slightly closer, so they're bigger. They're also slightly different bricks, so I'm going to just border it off, just to remind me not to do it. I hope people are finding this interesting. It feels a little strange that because I'm just concentrating so hard on this, I keep forgetting to talk. So I wasn't sure whether this is something people would be up for tuning into. But we've got 13 people here apparently, so that's nice. Feels like a little show. And maybe there's a few little tricks you can learn from it. I don't know, as I go. But mainly I thought it'd be quite nice to just get everybody together for a bit. What's my picture gone there? A little notice board down here as well. Because that's like navy blue, and I think that would be really nice to include because it would just put a little flash of colour in. And where does the window stop? Just along the top of there. Up to there. There we go. So that's some of the brickwork in. I think what I'll just do is soften that together. And the way I do that is I just use a slightly damp brush. Just gently go over the top. And that demonstrates quite well what I was saying earlier, how if you re-wet your paper while you've got some paint down, it might move the paint a little bit, so you've just got to be very, very gentle. But if the paint has dried, usually it stays quite well, so it might blur it a little, but it won't completely get rid of it. You can just use that to soften off any edges that might have happened if the paper dries. Okay. I forgot to do some bricks underneath that little notice board as well. Right, I'm going to go right back up to the tower because that is nice and dry now. I'm going to do a second layer over the top, and that should hopefully start to bring it out a little bit. Might need to practice this colour though, that's quite specific. Okay. If you're painting from a photo, I do recommend having a bit of spare paper somewhere, which is the same as the paper that you're working on, and to occasionally just try your colour out before you put it down. And it just helps because it's so annoying if you mix it looks right on the palette, but then the paper takes it in a slightly different way. So you can actually see what happens when the white of the paper is coming through and what the final colour is going to be. So hi Jane. So Jane says that she's here having fun painting St Catherine's Chapel in Abbotsbury near us, and lovely knowing my daughter and granddaughter are doing this down in Plymouth, and I believe is that Kate is your granddaughter, daughter and granddaughter. That's really cool that you've decided to do a church as well. I hope that you share your results with me afterwards as well. That would be really nice to see. So I've mixed a bit more of it's a slightly like more golden colour this time, just because that front, the face of the tower, which is facing the sun, is actually quite golden. And this colour, I've made quite a lot of it because I'm going to pull some of it down onto the main body of the church as well later, just to make it all match. And also, don't be afraid to leave some white showing on your paintings. With watercolour, it's better to leave the white showing through than it is to try and paint white over the top, because white can actually make your colours quite muddy, and a lot of watercolour painters sort of frown on using white at all. But actually, I think it's got a place. You can use it sparingly in different situations. But I think watercolours look really beautiful when you can just see the paper shining through. And it's like the light is coming through the painting rather than shining at it. So it's a bit more gentle, I suppose. And that's what makes watercolours look how they do. Whereas if you were painting with something like acrylic, it would be the other way around, where you'd paint the white on, the highlights on last. It takes a bit of planning because you need to remember which bits to keep the lightest. But this is all stuff that gets a little bit easier with practice. Right, now for the front. I'm using a little bit of blue over the top because actually this is quite a nice colour already, and the blue over the top should just make it, it's a bit of a darker face, it's in shadow. But if I put the blue on light enough, then the colour underneath will just shine through it. I'm using lots of water and just adding it on very gently. seems to be pulling the details through, which is good. Dark a bit there, so I'll probably have to make that even darker. I'm going to have to make a start on that clock as well soon. So let's pop a few more bricks on in the points where there are a couple of extra dark bricks. Like around that window there's some definition. There we go, that's a bit better. And again, this bit is lost behind the tree, so I'm just going to put some paint there, but I'm not worried too much about how precise that is. When you've got a tree in the painting, that is a good gift because you can use it to cover up anything you're not too sure about. Just make the tree a little bit bigger and a bit more leafy. And hide anything behind it. And that's not cheating, that's allowed. That's the difference between taking a photo and doing a painting. You can move stuff around in a painting. Another little drain pipe up here which comes from the tower roof and it goes across, and I assume it comes in between those bits there. That's very important that we have that drain pipe there, otherwise the roof will get so wet and it'll come in, it'll fall on our bells, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to draw my drain pipe. Okay. Okay, I am putting off doing this clock face. I need to stop putting it off and just go for it. So the colour of the numbers on the clock, it's like a very, very light, well, they are gold, but in the picture they are very light brown, which is almost like the colour I've got there, but it's got a little bit more yellow in it than that. So let's try that. See what that looks like. Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to sweep that across the whole clock. That's my background layer. I'll do it on the other one as well. Okay. I have to wait a little bit for that to dry before I go back on. Every time I've drawn this tower, because this isn't the first time I've drawn it, I always feel as though this face is bigger than this one. And I know that's not possible. I mean, and it's not even closer in the picture, but it always ends up looking like that somehow. It's like a strange mystery. Okay. It's starting to come to life now with these shadows added. Okay. I think I'll come back onto the wall here with a slightly different kind of grey, with a bit more of that brown from the tower added. And I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to make the bricks. Every time I'm using a really light version of it by adding a lot of water which shows off the sort of transparency of watercolour. Which is what I really like. I found by painting lots of different church buildings, you find different things, that some that are individual to certain churches, some little architectural bits that are completely distinctive, and some that are quite similar between churches. So sometimes I'll paint one and come across something that I remember painting on a previous church. I just think it's really nice. Makes you really study the building whenever you have to paint it, because you have to look at almost every single brick almost, and look at what it's doing. Just another way of appreciating it, I suppose. Okay. What's this doing? Yeah, that is ready. Okay. This is the tiniest paintbrush that I own. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. My camera might not let me focus on it. Ta-da! Very tiny. Now this is for the clock, and if it goes wrong, it's fine. But every time I get to a clock, I challenge myself to get it right and show the time. And so the time on this clock is just between, that's even harder, just between 10 past and 10:15 in the morning. So let's start with the numbers. The colour is like dark navy blue with a little bit of brown in it, I reckon. Let's try that. I think that will work. Okay. Okay, big deep breath. And 12 is up the top. Three is over here. 6 down the bottom. 9 is over here. I'm just outlining them because I want the gold to be the colour of the letters, the numbers even. Five is a point like a V, as you can see. Okay, let's just count them and make sure I got 12 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes. Okay. Now that's the middle point, and we want the arm, the hand to go through there. And the hour hand to go to point at X 410 in Roman numerals. Okay, that's the clock. Now I have to fill in everything apart from that and see what happens. I feel very tense. Okay, so now I just need to circle around, close off all those numbers. Okay, did I do it? Just about, maybe. I feel like I need to make the clock a bit darker though, but at least I've got the outline in. Okay, I feel quite happy with that. The other clock is even harder, but in the picture you can't really read the time anyway. So you can just about see a shadow on the bottom of the minute hand. You can just about see it, so if I just draw that in to begin with, very lightly because the sun's shining directly onto this clock. And then I'm going to sort of fill in but leave some spaces for the numbers. There we go. And then the top bit, that's where the light's really shining, so it's very, very light. And then I'll go around the edge. So that one's not as easy to read. And I just go around and outline it. And pop another extra shadow along the bottom of there. we go. It's certainly starting to look like a clock tower. I'm using the same sort of dark brown, indigo brown that I mixed for the clock to just outline those bricks, because it is almost exactly the same colour. I've added a little bit more brown to it, but it's picking out the edges of those bricks quite nicely. And it also makes the clock sit better in the painting because it matches up to the extra colour, so it doesn't look quite so strong. Okay, and some more at the top. Need a bit of defining. Okay, and I really like this colour of mix, so I'm just going to go in under the roof there. I'm also using my really tiny brush still because it's doing me a favour at the moment. It's giving me some really nice sharp lines. Okay, just going to come under there and give that bit a little shadow. Coming up to St Andrew there, and then avoid him. That there. Okay, and then some of those bricks at the top are also a little bit darker, so I'll just pop those on. Okay. I'm going to put my little tiny brush away for a bit. It's very tempting to just go in and do all those tiny little details while I've got it in my hand. But if I go too far with that, when I go to do the wash over the top, I'll just have to do it all again anyway. So leave it for a bit. Smooth out some of those. So to just mark out where the roof is for this thing over here, this house. Ready for the tree to go over the top. And I think that the next bit I need to work on is this porch area, which is actually a very important historic part of the church, so I've got to make sure I do get this right. It has a little cross on the top of the porch. So I'm going to start off by outlining that. And then go down one side. This is the main entrance to the church. I think when I draw churches, I do try to include the front doors as well as from the, like when I'm choosing the perspective. So I think it just makes it look a lot more welcoming, especially if I'm trying to draw a church for somebody that knows that church really well. What's that? Ellen says, looks great, just joined. Are you able to do any close-ups? I can certainly try. I will zoom in as much as my camera will allow and show you what I'm up to. As long as it behaves and it focuses on the right place, then we should be okay. Just outline that bit and then I'll do that. Blur that out while it's still a bit wet. Okay. Let's see what I can do. Where are we? That's without moving it from the tripod. let's try zooming in like that. No, this is not going too well. I think that's possibly about as close as I'm going to be able to get it. Yeah, tripod's not happy now. Need to work out a better system, I think, because I've got the tripod right up against my chair, so I can't really do much. Oh, that didn't like that. There we go. Yeah, don't unplug the camera, that doesn't work. There you go. that was your close-ups. Yeah, it's not going to be quite as easy, but what I'll do is I'll post, once this is finished, I'll post up a picture of it with some close-ups of some of the details. As far as I can get is probably about there. Yeah, let's move it back again. Oh, it's exciting with technology, isn't it? Let's move it so I'm not in the way as well. There we go. I'll do some experimenting between now and the next time I try this and see what the best position for the camera to be in is. I've got about 20 minutes until the end of this stream, so I won't be finishing this painting today. But I think I've made a very good start. And it'd be really nice to know if the people that are watching along at the moment, have you enjoyed this? Is this something that you'd like me to do a little bit more often? Or do you prefer the tutorials? And I am at the moment I'm planning to do both. So I want to do at least one tutorial a month, and then I could possibly add some little things like this, but only really if people want me to. So let me know what you think and whether you've got anything, I suppose, out of coming along. And as I said before, if you'd like to access any of my previous tutorials and have a little go, do feel free. They are suitable for absolute beginners. So if you've never picked up a paintbrush before, that's fine. And also, I found that families, including very young children, are also enjoying it as well, which is really nice to hear. So if you've got a family at home in desperate need of some entertainment, feel free to get the paints out and watch one of the tutorials, which might keep them quiet for a little bit, maybe. quite like that through the open door you can see the stained glass window on the opposite side of the church inside there. It's really nice. I hadn't noticed that before about this photo. Just leaving a little fleck to represent that stained glass window. Might have to define it a little bit more than that to make it not look like a mistake. Something like that maybe. So thank you, Elena, for saying the tutorials are good for technique learning, but this has been good for learning how to construct more complex pictures. Okay, so you've learned some things from watching. That's really good. I'm glad to hear that. And I like the fact that I'm the background to your working from home today. Wonder how it compares to having the radio on or something. I don't think I'd make a very good radio presenter, but there we go. Okay. to make a start now on these stained glass windows. Beginning by just outlining them. I am using my tiny brush again because it's just giving me that little bit more control. Okay. So the pattern in this window, I have done this. I had a practice run a few times before because this isn't the first time I've painted St Andrews, and the windows are very hard because the patterns are quite complicated. So there's that's the big arch. There's 2 arches within that, and then 4 arches underneath. So I don't think I've ever managed to get it looking spot on before. But if it comes out looking like a stained glass window, then I'll be happy. So just little curves, and this one goes all the way down. Okay, and then I can really close to my pictures. This one. So let's divide that into 2. So 1 line there, 1 line there. And then it's not just a curve, it's like a little flick upwards like that. So like that and like that. That. Something like that. And then I'll just join those up to the top. And that's the structure of like the frame that goes around the glass. And it is actually even more intricate than that if you look at it in real. There's a few extra little lines and things like that, but I think for the sake of this painting it would possibly be too over complicated if I start to draw every individual pillar. So I like to do a suggestion of what's there. So put the main shapes in, and then when I colour it, to use little blocks of colour to represent where the light falls and things like that, but not to go too overboard. Okay. So rather than completely do that window, I'm going to move on to the next one and see if I can get that the same. Outline it. Done. we go. And those lines that go in between the panes of glass, I put those on first, and then when I paint the glass on, I can paint over the top of that because I've put that down quite heavy, and they should sort of shine through. I might leave a little gap just before some of them, just to put a little bit of a highlight on. Okay, next one. Trying to send a photo but can't find the symbol. Okay. Are you trying to send it to the Facebook page? Now this one's going to be complicated because it's hidden behind the fence post, so gate post I should say, so I can only see a little bit of it, so I'll draw what I can see. It's also in shadow, which is helpful because I don't need to be quite as precise. Just leave it like that, I think. Okay, so I've done, I think the first layer. I think there's possibly several other layers that need to go on top of that one to really bring out the detail. So I feel like the tower is almost there. There's just a couple of final touches I want to do. But then I need to come forward, and the main feature of my painting is actually going to be St Andrew here over the top. So that's where I'll probably be spending quite a lot of time. So I'm going to stop there and come back to this a bit later on. And it is now 3 o'clock, which is when I said I'd finish. So I have overrun a little bit. But thank you very much for joining me for this little test run. I've actually really enjoyed myself. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. Obviously we've had a few less viewers than usual for the tutorials, but then I didn't really spread the word very far, so that could be why. So if you want to let me know how you found this, that would be really helpful to me when I'm planning my next sessions, and perhaps I'll work out some kind of system where we do a tutorial and then we do me just demoing a painting and carry on like that for a little bit until things go back to normal. But I wanted to say as well that I've actually really enjoyed doing these YouTube tutorials, and one thing that's been really nice is it means that people can join from all across the UK, and also they can rewatch and go back in their own time. So I feel like even when things go back to normal, I'll probably, every now and again, I'll probably still do a couple of tutorials online, just because it's been really fun, a really cool learning curve as well, getting used to the technology and things, and I'm still learning. So hopefully it'll get better and better. But yeah, so any feedback that you can give would be fantastic and just helps me out. If you want to send photos, I know, Jane, you've been trying. I don't know if YouTube will allow you to send a photo in a comment. So I think the best way to share your photo with me, and photos of anything you've been doing while I've been doing St Andrews here, is on the Facebook page. And there is a link to the Facebook page in the description of this video. So you can click through to it from there, and then if you click write a post, then you can attach an image to it, and I can see it that way, and I'll comment and I'll say thank you for joining me. Also, if you do go on my Facebook page, there's a option there to leave a review, and if you've enjoyed today and you'd like to leave me a review, that's really helpful, because it lets me know that you enjoyed it, but it also means that if anyone's looking for something to do and they come across my page, if they're a bit nervous about starting watercolours, and those are exactly the kind of people that I'd really like to tempt to come and see my tutorials, then they can read people's comments and know whether it's for them. So I will leave you there. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and if you want to come along to my next tutorial, look out for the one on the 17th of May on the Sunday. I think it's the 17th. I just want to check that is definitely a Sunday. I can't even open my calendar. Just like to doubt myself sometimes. Yes, okay, that is right. It is the 17th of May, and we'll be doing a step-by-step painting, start to finish. I usually go through them a couple of times. So if you can find that event on my Facebook page and click to say you're going. In that in the description there, it will have all the list of materials that you'll need to find if you want to paint along with me. And if you've got any questions, you can send me an email as well, and I'm quite happy to answer. So thank you again, and I'm going to leave you for a few minutes with a few seconds with my end screen, because last time I ended it a bit too soon. So I've made an end screen now. Exciting times. So I'll see you next time, and take care everybody. Bye.